Today we are going to be painting this Monstera plant. And this is the reference photo. I'm going to stick pretty true to the reference photo when it comes to the plant itself. But for the background, I really want to make it a very light pink here. And the floor, I'm going to leave a white, but I am going to put a shadow in down here. So the first thing that I would like to do, and this may be a little bit counterintuitive, but I do want to put the wall, the pink wall in for this piece. So I'm going to take my round 16 and I want to begin with my permanent rose. This permanent rose is great and I'm lightening it up. And I'm going to begin trying to get into these tight spaces because there is, it would be a lot easier to just leave this background white, but that would be kind of boring. And I'm not in the mood for boring. The paintbrush that I'm using has a very nice point to it, so I can get little spots in there and really work in the detail. I'm going to come back for the detail in a bit, but right now I'm going to do these big swaths of space. This is where the round 16 comes in handy. I've done big swaths of space like this with like my round 6 before, but really that's challenging because it's a lot of surface area to cover. And if it dries in between, you're going to end up with lines. I will come into these places with either my round 6 or my round 2 into all of those little nooks and crannies to show the background is pink, but for the time being, I just want to try to get these big areas without leaving a line where one spot might dry. All right, now here's where I'm moving to the other brush. This is a round 6. Okay, now that background is done and we need to let all of that dry before we go into the leaves. There are pieces of this that we can begin painting. I want to start with this because it's going to be fun. So I think that what I want to begin with is an Indian Theron blue because I'm looking for some contrast here. I'm getting my Indian Theron blue. And I'm going to begin to bring that color in. All right, we're getting there. I want to begin color mapping a light green. So a very, very light green, I would say, like, I think permanent sap in my Winsor and Newton is what I want to work with. I am going to add a little bit of Winsor yellow to my permanent. I'm lightening that up a bit. I want to color map by laying down this color everywhere that I see that green. So I'm going to just go ahead and begin bringing this color in to the leaves. This will take a little while, and that's fine. I personally, even though I know I could go over that line, I'm going to be painting it the same color, I just don't necessarily like to do it that way. I like to paint each leaf individually. I think it helps create that feeling of it being separate. I see this actually needs to be pink. So that little spot in there, I need to leave that blank. It needs to be pink. And if I weren't painting separately, I probably would not have gotten that. I think that spot also needs to be pink. So just paying attention to all of the details. Watercolor teaches us to see. Now, if this is dry, it's not fully dry, but it's probably dry enough to plug in that pink where it needs pink. So for instance, right here and right here. And a little bit right here. Okay, so the next place I want to get a little bit of like yellow, more yellow than anything else, is this little spot right here. I'm going to take brown and get in here. I almost want to bring that there. Yeah, there we go. Now, the color I'm working with next, I'm going for the hooker green. This is the green that I find I like the best. And I'm going to begin putting it where I think it needs to be. So for instance, over here, it needs to darken up. And we might even want to make this a little bit darker. So right now that's just hooker green, but I think hooker green with just a touch of Payne's gray is probably a little bit more of what we actually want. That's the color. Yep, there we go. And that's under here. There we go. Now I want to look and see where else I see that. So I definitely see it back here. I see it on part of this leaf here. The next thing I want to do is take this ultratherin blue and I want to darken up some of the spots in here. So we've got this really darker base down here. And that rim is going to be, oops, a little dark in here. And that's okay, actually. It just bled into what I have, but that's fine. It will add depth there. And I do want to pull this in right here. Now I'm going to go back to my sap green. And I am, I think, gonna add a little hooker green to my sap green. And I want to get in some of these places. I want to give this a little bit of a shadow, and I didn't exactly draw it in, but the shadow kind of goes that way. And I want it to be the Windsor Violet. So it kind of starts here and goes out back here. Okay, there we go, a little bit of a shadow. And now some of the rest of this plant, what I want to do, let's take a look here. So there are some spots that are just darker, and I'm gonna really lean on the hooker green and the Windsor green to darken up some of these spaces to give the plant a little bit more depth. I'm purely going in with like hooker green and just different greens where it looks like I can just make a little bit more of an impact with color. It's these little details that we're putting in now that really, when all is said and done, are what make watercolor, the dark darks and the light lights, the contrast. Okay, I really like how this has turned out. I hope you have had so much fun playing with the details of this Monstera plant.